My name is Kira, and I am 36 years old. I grew up in a world where every day was a battle just to survive. My father passed away when I was 10, leaving my mother to carry the weight of our family alone. She worked from sunrise to sunset, her hands rough and tired, but her spirit never broke. We lived in a tiny one-room house where the walls were thin and the winters were cold, but my mother's love kept us warm. When I turned 13, I started working alongside her. I cleaned houses for wealthy families and washed dishes in restaurants until my fingers went numb. Every coin I earned went straight to my mother. She would smile at me with tears in her eyes and call me her strong girl, but I never felt strong. I felt exhausted and scared, though I always smiled back because I wanted her to believe I was okay. Then, one morning, my mother woke up unable to walk. Her body had finally given out after years of endless work. We had no money for a doctor, and no one came to help us. I sat beside her bed, holding her fragile hand in mine, watching her fade away. She looked at me with those tired eyes and whispered, "Don't be sad, my girl. You are stronger than you know." That night, she died quietly in my arms. The world felt empty after that. I had no family left, no friends to turn to, just a hollow ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. I left that house and everything in it behind. I made a promise to my mother's memory that I would never give up, no matter how hard life became. After months of searching, I found work as a security guard for a wealthy family in their large estate. The Collinses were nothing like anyone I had ever known. Mrs. Collins was gentle and kind, always bringing me tea and asking about my day as if I mattered. Her husband was a busy businessman who rarely spoke, constantly on phone calls about money and deals. They had a son in his early 20s who seemed angry at the world. He never acknowledged me, but I didn't mind. For the first time in years, I had steady work, a small room to sleep in, and enough money to eat. Everything shattered on an ordinary Tuesday morning. I was opening the gate as usual when police cars surrounded the property with screaming sirens and shouting officers. They stormed past me into the house, kicking down doors with their guns drawn. I stood frozen, my hands trembling, not understanding what was happening. Within minutes, they emerged and grabbed me roughly, snapping cold handcuffs around my wrists. The family had been found dead inside, murdered in their own home. Mrs. Collins, who had shown me kindness, her husband, their son, all gone, lying in pools of blood. I couldn't breathe. My mind went blank with shock and horror. The police dragged me to their car while I screamed that I didn't do it, that I could never hurt anyone, especially not Mrs. Collins. But they didn't listen. I was the only person on the property. The security cameras had mysteriously stopped working that night. There were no other witnesses. They found traces of blood on my uniform from when I had discovered the scene. To them, the case was simple and clear. They gave me a public defender who barely looked at my file. He didn't fight for me in court, didn't argue against the weak evidence, didn't seem to care whether I lived or died. The trial was quick and cold. I sat in that courtroom watching my life end while strangers decided my fate. When the judge said the word guilty and sentenced me to life in prison, I collapsed. I was only 23 years old. Nobody cried for me. Nobody stood up and shouted that this was wrong. Nobody cared about the truth. Prison became my new reality. The walls were grey and cold, the silence heavy and suffocating. My cell was barely large enough to turn around in, with a thin mattress, a metal toilet, and a door that locked me away from the world. Every morning we lined up for tasteless food, then sat in silence for hours with nothing but our thoughts. At night, when the guards couldn't see, I cried until I had no tears left. But somewhere deep inside, I refused to let that place break me completely. Years crawled by, one painful day after another. I stopped counting them after a while because it hurt too much to think about all the time I was losing. Then, 12 years after my conviction, something extraordinary happened. A neighbor's old security footage was discovered during a property sale. The camera had been hidden and forgotten, but it had been recording that night. The video showed a figure near the house who wasn't me. A new lawyer took my case and began digging deeper into the evidence. He found inconsistencies that my first lawyer had never bothered to investigate. DNA testing had advanced since my trial, and they retested samples from broken glass found inside the house. The DNA didn't match mine. It belonged to someone else entirely, someone the family had known well. After months of investigation, they identified him as a friend of the son, a man with a history of drug addiction and debt. He had disappeared right after the murders, changed his identity, and started a new life far away. After 12 years of stolen life, I was finally declared innocent. The prison gates opened, and I walked out into a world that had moved on without me. Nobody waited for me on the other side. I had no home to return to, no phone to call anyone, no money in my pockets. I wandered the streets until I found a small bakery with warm light glowing through its windows. Inside, a woman was arranging fresh bread. I gathered all my courage and asked if she could spare anything because I was hungry and had nothing. She studied my face for a moment, then quietly handed me bread and water. Her small act of kindness meant everything to me. I walked to a nearby park and began asking people if they needed help with anything. Most ignored me or said no, their eyes looking through me as if I didn't exist. But an old man who cleaned the park every day stopped and said I could help him. He gave me a broom and showed me how to sweep the pathways properly. At the end of the day, he shared his sandwich with me and handed me a few coins. He told me to come back tomorrow, and I did. I came back every single day. After several weeks, the old man told me about a group of people who met regularly to support each other through difficult times. He brought me to one of their meetings, and for the first time in over a decade, I felt like I belonged somewhere. These people had faced their own hardships and understood what it meant to rebuild a life from nothing. They helped me find steady work and a small place to live. I made mistakes and felt terrified most days, but I never stopped trying. Life had taken almost everything from me. It had thrown me into darkness so deep I thought I would never see light again. But even when everything seems impossible and hope feels like a foolish dream, change can still come. Someone's kindness can spark a new beginning. I learned that even after the worst injustice, even after years of suffering, you can find your way back to life if you refuse to give up. My mother was right all along. I was stronger than I knew, and that strength carried me through the darkest nights until I finally found my dawn.